SOCKtober, and happy SOCKtober. So today I'm going to be talking about socks, obviously. I'm going to give you an update on a pair of socks that I was working on, and I am also, more importantly, going to share 8 colorful and scrappy sock patterns for all of your SOCKtober needs. So I did do a video last SOCKtober with some lovely sock patterns, but this time my focus is a little bit different. I wanted to specifically look for some patterns that are going to use up leftover sock yarn. So all of these are going to use at least 2 colors, and you are probably going to be able to get a pair out of 2 partially used skeins from previous socks. That was my goal going into this, because I don't know about you, but for me, to make a pair of socks, I probably use 5/8 of a skein of sock yarn, maybe a little bit more than half. So I don't quite have enough for a whole nother pair of socks using just that one color. But if I combined that with one other leftover skein, there I could probably get a full pair of socks. And this is especially true about shorty socks. And there are a couple of those in here. So in the interest of using up all of that sock yarn, instead of letting it just, marinate in the stash and doing nothing with it, I wanted to look for some sock patterns that we're going to start using those up. All of the sock patterns, I put together a bundle for you guys. I'm going to link to that in the description box down below. So it's going to have these 8 patterns that I want to talk about, and it actually has some extra patterns that, I can't talk about every pattern I found, but I thought they were really cute and I threw them in there. So these include colorwork socks, mosaic socks, striped socks, and some other interesting uses of sock yarn to create these colorful scrappy sock patterns. Now I say colorful because most of the photos here are pretty colorful, but you can always pick some muted tones. The other thing I've tried to do is pick some patterns that don't really require specific colors. So for example, in the bundle, you're going to find a link to some spooky socks that I thought were really cute. But if you want Halloween socks, you really kind of want them in the Halloween colors. And so we don't want you to go out and look for special yarn for this. So I threw them in there, but I'm really kind of focusing on these patterns that are going to use whatever sock yarn you have, whatever colors. All right, let's get started. So the first sock pattern I want to tell you about are the Toe Dosey Do socks. This is a pattern by Crazy Sock Lady Designs. So what caught my eye with this one was not actually the photos on the project page, but somebody's version that I happened to see on Instagram that looked really cute. So this pattern, I think, is specifically created with self-striping yarn in mind, but you could definitely just use scraps and stripe it yourself. So it says it's a perfect pattern for your self-striping yarn. It just creates a chevron pattern. I don't have the pattern, so I can't promise you, but generally that chevron pattern is just created with some basic increases and decreases. This is worked from the cuff down. And like I said, she specifically had self-striping yarn in mind, but the project I saw on Instagram definitely was somebody who was very consciously creating their own stripes with leftover scraps or perhaps even mini skeins, and it just looked beautiful. The pattern only includes 3 sizes. You will need about 100 grams of yarn total. But again, depending on your size, probably you don't. It just says 100 grams for all 3 sizes. That's clearly not the case. But especially if you're using scraps, mini skeins, you can just keep pulling your colors in. You could sort of plan out your colors from your leftovers. You could use one solid color leftover that you have and then a bunch of other leftovers in there. It's really very flexible. So only 3 sizes. You can probably get around that by, again, I don't have the pattern with me. It is on my list. Just depending on the stitch counts, you can probably just add, usually for socks, increments of 4 stitches, because that's a 1/2 inch. or you could work to a different gauge if you wanted to resize them. So this pattern is just $5. It is available on Ravelry. Again, that is Toe Dosey Do by Crazy Sock Lady Designs. Great to use up scraps or mini skeins. All right, the next one, you might be compelled to really want to pick autumn colors, but it's definitely not necessary. So these are the Forever Autumn socks. And it looks like there are two different colorwork patterns in here. So one is acorns and one is leaves, but I'm actually focusing on the leaf one. So here's where maybe you wanted to do autumn colors, but you don't really need to. They could be any colors. And again, here's where you're going to be able to, you could probably use like a different color for every round of the leaves that are on here. So you can have, you know, one repeat of green leaves and one of orange and one of, you know, whatever, red. You could, you know, they don't have to be autumn leaves. They could be nice spring, green, bright leaves. And then you'll be able to use a solid for your background. You could use a variegated for the leaves. You could use a gradient for the leaves. Really a lot of options in here. You might kind of feel like you want your autumn colors, but I really think you could do this in just about any color combination. It would be really cute. So again, this is the Forever Autumn sock set. This is by Stone Knits. She has a ton of colorwork socks. I'm sort of about colorwork socks because tension and colorwork, especially for beginners, can be really tricky, and you really do need your socks to stretch because socks are supposed to have negative ease, but they still need to stretch to fit around your heel as you are putting them on. So just a word of caution, if you have not done colorwork socks before, it just can be tricky. You may need to go up a needle size. You may need to do some practicing with your tension and your catching floats and things like that, because you do, with that stranded yarn being carried behind, it can be tricky to maintain that stretchiness in your socks that you really do need so that they fit correctly. But still really cute. The pattern includes 3 sizes. So again, not a ton of variety in here. Probably you're not going to make these socks for your whole family, but if you have sort of an average size woman's foot, presumably that's probably right in the wheelhouse here. So to fit foot circumferences of 8, 9, 10 and a half inches. It says for the first, so she does provide some more information, more detailed information about the yardage. So for the size 1, you need 50 grams of your main color and 20 grams of the contrast color for the leaves. For sizes 2 and 3, you need 60 grams of your main color and 20 grams to 25 grams of your contrast color. So you really don't need a lot of the contrast color, especially if you wanted to, again, work each set of repeats in a different color. You do need a fair chunk of your main color, but you could also use your contrast color for your heels, toes, and cuffs and even things out a little bit more that way. So as I said, the pattern is actually a set and includes both of those motifs, the leaves and the acorns, and it is whatever CHF is, or $7.41. What is that? CH, is that francs? I don't know. I don't know what it is. All right, this next one is actually another set, which I think is interesting. I don't know how I feel about these sock sets. It makes sense when they're similar, but in this one in particular, they're very different. So whatever, it doesn't matter. This is the Midwinter Socks set by Summer Lee, who is another designer who does tons and tons and tons of beautiful socks. But in particular, I am talking about this shorty sock with the stripes and what are called flea stitches, lice stitches, something like that, some kind of bug within the stripes. So definitely this is a case where you can use really even very small bits of scrap yarn to make those stripes. And you also don't actually need a lot of the main color because they're a shorty sock, although you could probably make them as long as you wanted to. So The whole set includes, it looks like 3 different styles of socks. Again, I don't know why, because they, whatever. And the whole set is only $6, so great deal there. So the sizes here, this one includes 4 sizes, so 7, 8, 9, and 10-inch socks. She does give you some detailed information about the yarn usage for each of the 3 designs. It is not clear from the Ravelry page which one is which, but what is notable is that the gauge here is 40 stitches to the inch. A standard gauge for socks is usually about 8 stitches to the inch. And when you do it that way, if you increase it in increments of 4, you get a 1/2 inch difference between sizes. So that's probably why the difference between these sizes is a full inch, because the gauge is tighter at 10 stitches to the inch, but of course it still uses a light fingering weight yarn. The total yardage for all 3 versions is under 400 yards. And again, especially for that particular one that I showed you, you could just use all kinds of scraps there, and they're just so cute. So you don't really have to get too bogged down in the exact yardage if you are making these socks out of your scrap yarn, because they're just such small amounts. The only thing you really need a relatively sizable chunk of is your main color, and since they're shorty socks, you don't really need that much. So these are worked, yes, obviously in the round. They are all worked cuff down. It does say afterthought heel. I don't know if that is for all of them. Probably that does apply to all of them. Just looking at the photos, it looks like you are going to maintain your stitch patterns by just working a straight sock and then going back and putting the heel in so that your stripes or your whatever doesn't get disrupted. So again, that is the Midwinter Socks set by Summerlee, only $6 for all 3 on Ravelry. The next one is a super colorful one. These are the Dancing Droplet socks. This is a pattern by Stephen West. His patterns in general tend to be very colorful, which generally speaking is not my vibe, but for socks, I really do like all kinds of crazy colors and such. Because you don't have to match them with your outfit. They're just under your clothes, under your shoes. Nobody's gonna see them unless you want them to see them, and it won't matter so much, you know, if they actually coordinate with the rest of your outfit. So they are top-down socks that feature what he's calling a droplet pattern, which looks like a kind of a dip stitch. This one includes 5 sizes, so you have a little bit more variety here in terms of who these socks are going to fit. This might be better if you are looking to knit socks for other people. You have more sizes to choose from. It looks like you are going to use a fair bit of a main color, up to a skein, a full skein, depending for the largest size, but much less on the contrast color, which is at most 1/4 of a skein. Droplets are not worked, the droplets are not worked with a separate color, so your contrast color is being used for your heels, cuffs, and toes. The main color is used throughout the leg and instep and sole of the sock, and you really probably want to get something crazy and variegated here that's really going to make this look as colorful and vibrant as it does here. So this one is a little bit different in that you are still using a fairly big chunk of just one color for the main part of the sock, but the pattern is written for a relatively short sock. The heels, toes, and cuffs are all contrast, so that really does take up a big chunk of your yarn. So I definitely still think this fits in the scrappy yarn, because especially, you know, for some of the smaller sizes, you still don't need a full skein of that main color. You need probably less than half for the smallest size, and then a little bit more for each of the larger sizes. The other thing is, because this main color is variegated, you could also just take a bunch of scraps and create essentially a variegated yarn on your own by alternating your yarn every couple of rounds. Same difference. And that way you can definitely use up even more of your scrappy yarn. You're going to still get that cute droplet design that's going to make, you know, little bits of color pop. And you can still kind of pull the whole thing together by using a contrast color. So even though it's not specifically made for scraps, I still think it is a good candidate. So this is available on Ravelry for €7 or $8 US. Again, the Dancing Droplet Socks by Stephen West. All right, we don't want to forget one of our big trends for fall 2024, which is mosaic knitting. If you have missed my video on fall trends, be sure to check that out. So obviously I need to throw these in here. These are the Pressed Flowers Socks by Amy Christophers, not sure. And if you have been interested in the whole mosaic thing but are not ready to tackle like a cardigan or a pullover, I think this is going to be a good choice. And again, because you're using 2 colors, you don't need a full skein of either one. So these are worked from the top down. They use, it says, approximately 250 yards of the main color and 150 yards of your contrast color. There is only one size provided, and it's written for a very average 8-inch woman's foot. But it does say, mosaic knitting pressed flowers motif is worked throughout the sock. It is very stretchy, which helps give these socks a snug fit for wider feet or those with larger shoe sizes. Going up a needle size or 2 is going to basically blah, 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 change the circumference, which seems pretty obvious. So I don't know how this motif works. I have not looked at it. I haven't done any pressed flowers things myself, so I don't know how easy it would be to actively resize these to work with a different number of stitches. If it were easy, she probably would have done it herself. So that is something to keep in mind. However, fiddling with your gauge a little bit might help. And if you are sort of in the camp of the average woman's size foot, you're all set with what she has given you. So again, you're going to be able to use 2 leftover skeins of sock yarn to make yourself a whole pair of these. You can use 1 solid and 1 variegated. You could also, again, create your own stripes by using small leftover scraps to create kind of like a gradient in your flowers while keeping your main color. So this is only $5, which makes sense. There's only 1 size in there. And it is available on Ravelry. And there are 344 lovely projects to look through for some inspiration if you are interested in that. Again, Pressed Flower Socks by Amy Christophers. All right, the next sock in my collection here are the Totally Tesselated, patterned by Andrea Mallory. And this one actually uses 3 colors, so even more of a chance to use up some leftover sock yarns. So this one, again, is using slip stitches, so it's a sort of mosaic style knitting to create this, I don't even know what to call it. It's kind of checkerboardy looking, but I still wouldn't say checkerboard. Like, it kind of has vertical stripes and horizontal. I don't know what you would call it, but let's see what it says. So it says they are knit from the cuff down using the magic of slipped stitches to create an addictive 3-color sock with an afterthought heel. So the pattern includes 4 sizes: 6.5, 7.5, 8.5, 9.5 inch foot finished circumference. So keep in mind, you want negative ease, about 10%. And she does have some yarn substitution ideas in here. So she's calling for some specific yarns, but again, if you're trying to use your scraps and leftovers, you probably want to take a peek at that and see what she has to say, because the specific yarn she is using are a fingering weight merino yak nylon, a sport weight superwash wool, and a lace weight Surrey alpaca. Okay, so my guess is she's probably holding the fingering weight double with the lace weight Surrey and then the sport weight single, but I don't know because I haven't bought this pattern. It is in my queue, I think. So you probably could instead use 2 sport weight yarns, if you did not have a bit of leftovers of the Surrey alpaca. Personally, I find that I do have lots of leftovers of that because the yardage usage, when you hold it double with another yarn, like in a sweater or whatever, it never seems to work out. I always end up with extra of the silk mohair or the Surrey alpaca silk. So just something to keep in mind. Also, this bear paw sock yarn sounds lovely. Maybe I'll have to try that sometime. But you will be unsurprised to hear that there are 451 projects on Ravelry, so you can look through and get some ideas for how you want to use your yarn and what yarns you want to use, how you want to work up, you know, what kind of contrast you need between your colors and all of that stuff. So again, those are the totally tesselated socks, and I know this is a pattern she has used in, I think, a shawl and maybe a pullover, so if you already have one of those, you could probably just implement the stitch pattern on a pair of socks yourself. But if not, the pattern is available for $7 on Ravelry. All right, this one is one that I saw on Instagram. Again, I don't spend nearly as much time on Ravelry as I used to, but I am on Instagram a fair bit. So these are the Freshness socks. This is a pattern by Zanette Knits. I don't know how that's pronounced. Zanete Knits. And this, as you can see, is a stranded colorwork pattern. So it says the Freshness sock pattern brings something new and different with its toe up construction, and attractive gusset. So I think that is what drew my attention, was just the way that the gusset was done on the socks is really cute. It is also a chance to refresh your yarn stash by putting together exciting leftover yarn combinations or using up a collection of mini skeins. So definitely fits the bill for what we are doing here today. The pattern is obviously for shorty socks. It includes 3 sizes. You could make your socks as long as you wanted. That is one of the nice things about toe-up socks, is that, you know, depending on how much yarn you have, once you get past the heel, you can just knit until, you know, half your yarn is gone. You don't have to keep them as shorty socks if you don't want to. So the pattern includes 3 sizes. Again, the gauge is, this time it is 8 stitches to the inch, so resizing, you would be adding increments of 4, but I don't know what the stitch pattern looks like, so you'd have to look into that one. You do not need a lot of yarn. You need somewhere between 80 and 160 yards of your main color and 120 and 215 yards of your contrast color for the short version. The techniques you're going to need to know here: Judy's Magic Cast On for your toe-up socks, or, you know, your preferred cast on for toe-up socks. Japanese short rows, which I feel like I maybe did once. Definitely something to look into. And tubular bind off, which is almost always optional. Again, fingering weight yarn, no surprise there. And it says they are worked from the toe up with gusset increases on the bottom of the foot instead of the side. So that's what makes it look really cute. And after turning the heel and working the heel flap, the leg is worked in the round to the desired length, finished with a 1x1 rib. Easy peasy. So really cute, unique gusset construction, fun patterning on the rest of the foot, and a great chance to use up scraps or mini skeins here. So again, this pattern is available on Ravelry for $5.75. I particularly love sort of the muted colors in this sample photo, but there are also some other more colorful versions to inspire you if you want to check that out. Again, Freshness socks. All right, and then the last official one I want to tell you about are the Shortbread socks. This is a pattern by the Petite Knitter with this kind of gingham plaid checkerboard stitch pattern that we have seen in a bunch of other stuff over the last year or so. I really love sort of the very neutral vibes with her particular sample, but you could obviously make these as colorful as you wanted. And you could choose to use one solid color and then stripe all your contrast colors. If you're really looking to use up scraps, you could then reverse it on your opposite sock, which is something I almost always do when I am doing things that have two parts like mittens or socks and two colors, I'll usually swap my main and contrast color on the second one. Just makes it a little more interesting to knit and gives it a cute look when you actually use it. So I think obviously she is just showing it in very solid colors, but you could definitely play with this, create sort of a striped or variegated background. So it says, they are knit top down in the round, stranded colorwork motif, afterthought heel. And it includes sizes for children, teens, and adults. So yes, there are a lot of sizes in this pattern. So it is sized with the circumference from 4.5 to 12.5 inches. There is, let's see, some of the sizes have an inch in between and some have a 1/2 inch. I don't know why. Whatever. There are a lot of sizes in here, so at least it has that going for it. It probably is just the nature of the stitch pattern that it couldn't be easily divisible for 1/2 inch increments for all of the sizes. And your color usage says you will need somewhere between 61 and 335 yards of each color, depending on your size. So none of the sizes require a full skein, unless probably you don't swap your main and contrast color when you switch them. In that case, you are going to use more of one than the other. But still, probably only for the largest sizes would you need a full skein of yarn for your main color. So again, you could use a main color and a contrast color, fine, but you could also create stripes of your own by using your scraps, and tons of sizes for this one. This I think is definitely a contender for, you know, you want to make socks for the whole family. Everybody has matching socks. That would be really cute in this sort of plaid pattern. I think is adorable. So again, that's the Shortbread socks by the Petite Knitter, available for $9 Canadian or $6.96 US on Ravelry. All right, that is all the official 8 patterns I'm going to tell you about, but I will tell you about one bonus, which is my own pattern. These are the Good Dividend socks. This is a shorty sock pattern that uses 2 colors of yarn. And you can get this pattern for free when you sign up for my newsletter. So you don't even have to buy anything. You can get it for free. Or you can pay $7 if you don't want to sign up for my newsletter. That is fine. So because these are shorty socks, you wouldn't need a full skein anyway, but because you're using 2 colors, you can definitely use scraps here. The pattern includes 6 sizes, so it's going from 7.5 to 10 inch finished foot circumference. Again, you want your negative ease. And you're somewhere between 100 and 225 yards of each of your colors. These are worked from the toe up. As I said, that is my preferred sock construction. So, and this one uses a slip stitch pattern to sort of create what end up looking like vertical stripes on the instep of the foot. And you can also do that fun thing where you swap your colors for your second sock. So again, this is a free pattern if you sign up for my newsletter, and it is a great way to use up some scrap sock yarn that you might have lying around. It especially looks nice if you use one variegated and one that's more solid, but you can really play around with it. And the sample I used is 2 variegated yarns, although one is definitely a little crazier than the other. So if you are interested in grabbing that pattern for free, the link to my newsletter is in the description box down below. All right, those are all 8 of the patterns I wanted to share with you. Colorful scrappy socks for SOCKtober. They are all in the bundle down below, as well as a few extras that almost fit the bill and I thought you might like to see. A big thank you to Taylor of the Wool Needles Hands podcast. So in the past, I would just link like every single pattern that I talked about, and then I was watching one of her episodes recently and she said she created a bundle, and then you just click on the bundle and everything is there, and that makes so much more sense. She's a smart cookie. So that is what I'm doing from this point forward, rather than trying to link to every single pattern. I just stick them in the Ravelry bundle, and all of the bundles are named, and it's much easier for everybody involved. So thank you, Taylor, for that insight. And the last thing I wanted to talk about very quickly is my socks that I'm currently wearing. So I am wearing socks because it is SOCKtober, and these are some socks that I made with the only wool sock yarn I found when I went on my wool shopping journey at Joann and Michael's earlier this year. So I have been wearing these for the last few days. I finished them a while back and I think talked about them on the podcast, but it has not been sock weather. So I hadn't been wearing them, but I have been wearing them recently. These are knit with Patons or Patons or whatever it is, Kroy socks, I think. So this is a yarn that I haven't used before. I really enjoyed watching the stripes come together. So it has some marling in each of the stripes. I especially like the red. My socks don't 100% match. That doesn't bother me super a lot. It's just, you know, the nature of socks. That's fine with me. But since I have been wearing them, I wanted to sort of talk about that now. I've only been wearing them for a few days and I haven't washed them since wearing them. They are very comfortable. They are not the super softest, but they are so warm. I am already getting some felting here along the heel. Now I have worn these with shoes a couple of times. I don't, yesterday I wore them briefly with shoes because I had to pick my son up from school because he was sick. He was not sick. And today I wore them with my boots to go outside and take pictures. So I am not surprised to see a little bit of felting on the heel, and that is actually perfectly fine because that means that that part is going to be a little sturdier and harder wearing until it starts wearing away and they get a hole in it. But they have been very comfortable, very warm, and I'm not seeing, I mean, again, it's only been a few days, but some yarns, they just seem to like fall apart as soon as you put them on, basically. I'm not seeing a whole lot of wear anywhere, really. I did knit these pretty tight, a little bit of a tighter gauge than I usually work, and I don't, probably just that I didn't have, I prefer to use a 1.5 and I don't always have it, so sometimes I grab a 1, sometimes I grab a 2. They do have a lot of cat fur on them and dog fur. But overall, I have been pretty happy with these. It is definitely, like I said, it is not the super softest. This is not a yarn that I would want like up here, but it is fine on my feet and they really, it does keep them feeling nice and warm without being sweaty, which, you know, is kind of gross, but some sock yarn just, it seems to create more sweat than others. But overall, I have been happy with this, and this is such a reasonably priced yarn for socks. We'll see how they continue to hold up as I wear them more. But I have been wearing them on and off since probably earlier this week when the temperature started to drop a little bit. And I don't know, they're really cute, and I have been really happy with them. Very happy with the warmth to sweatiness ratio. It is a good one. So, had never used this before. I still, you know, generally speaking, don't do a lot of yarn shopping at Michael or Joann's. I can't remember which one I got this at. I want to say Michael's. I went to Joann's yesterday to try to get buttons, and the whole button wall was just empty. Like, I don't know if I know they filed for bankruptcy. I don't know if they're trying to get people to stop coming to their stores so then they can say, oh, nobody comes to our stores, and they shut them down. It was just empty. So I didn't even finish, you know, I really needed the buttons was why I was there, and I didn't even do any additional shopping. So I don't know if this is at Joann's. I believe it was at Michael's, but really seems like a decent quality sock yarn for the price. So if you go on Michael's right now, you can get a ball of this for $6.29. And you need two, obviously, to make a pair of socks, or most of two. You know, probably don't need a full two, but just the way it is. For, you know, 12 bucks. Now I thought this particular colorway had an interesting name, but all I seem to be able to find is blue-gray marl. So, yeah, that's, if you see that in the store, this is what it turns out looking like. All right, that is everything I have to tell you about socks today. So 8 plus a few colorful scrappy sock patterns for your Socktober knitting. As for me, my next pair of socks are going to be using this beautiful yarn that I got from Rising Tide Fiber Company. Its colorway is called Spruce It Up. It is, as you can see, a lovely tweed. I was going to cast on some socks. Yesterday was October 1st. I was going to cast on some socks, and I can't find any of my sock knitting needles. So clearly I need to clear off some languishing sock projects somewhere along the way, but I am planning a pair of socks for Socktober and probably gonna dig into my scraps and pick at least one of those scrappy sock patterns for a pair of socks for myself. Maybe a gift, I don't know. I hope you are enjoying Socktober. If you found this video useful or interesting, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. New videos about knitting here every Saturday. If you're looking for me on social media, you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Maybe a Better Wanna, and I'll see you next time. Bye.